The alarms began as a whisper, barely audible chimes echoing through the bridge of Terran Defense Command. But within seconds the sounds swelled into a steady wail. Lights flashed red across every console. Admiral Rian Holt didn't flinch. He stood at the forward rail, gaze fixed on the tactical holomap dominating the command center. One by one, crimson markers ignited at the edge of Sol's Oort cloud. Dozens became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. "Confirm contacts," Holt said, voice calm but edged with steel. "Confirmed, Admiral," replied Commodore Elara, his second in command. Her face was pale beneath the harsh glow of the displays. "Kael Dominion warships, formation density consistent with a full-scale armada. Estimate 4,000 vessels minimum." A hush fell over the bridge. Engineers, comms officers, tactical staff, everyone froze for an instant, caught between disbelief and dread. 4,000 ships. Humanity's entire fleet, even counting reserve craft and planetary defense stations, numbered less than 1,000. Holt clasped his hands behind his back. "So they've finally arrived." Wren turned toward him, disbelief tugging at her usually steady composure. "Admiral, they outnumber us nearly 5 to 1. No coalition fleet has ever stopped them at such odds." "Correct," Holt said. "And no coalition fleet was human." That silenced her for a moment. She studied him, reading the resolve etched into every line of his face. Where others saw an impossible wall, Holt saw opportunity. The holomap updated again. The red tide advanced slowly, deliberately, like a predator savoring the chase. A young tactical officer swallowed hard. "They're not even rushing, sir. They're confident. They think this is already theirs." "Good," Holt replied. "Confidence makes them careless." Wren leaned closer, dropping her voice. "They'll expect us to scatter. Surrender our colonies, protect Earth as a last holdout." "Then we won't," Holt said. His eyes never left the crimson flood on the map. "We'll hold the line. Every world, every orbit. If they want Sol, they'll pay in blood." Before Wren could reply, a new signal pulsed across the comms. The bridge lights dimmed, replaced by a towering holographic projection. Overlord Varix Kael. The alien's visage loomed 3 meters tall, his elongated features shimmering like obsidian glass. Eyes of molten amber glared across the bridge. His voice carried the resonance of 100 machines, deep and commanding. "Terran Admiral," Varix intoned. "You stand at the edge of extinction. The Kael Dominion has no quarrel with you beyond necessity. Submit, and I will preserve a fragment of your species to serve in bondage. Resist, and your world will be remembered only as ash drifting through the void." Every officer on the bridge turned toward Holt. The alien's words pressed against their chests, heavy with inevitability. Holt took a slow step forward, expression unreadable. "Overlord Varix, history is full of conquerors. Many claimed permanence. Most are now dust." Varix tilted his head, intrigued rather than angered. "Bold words, from a species barely a child among stars." "You call us children," Holt said evenly. "But children grow. And when threatened, they fight harder than anyone expects." A low chuckle reverberated from the alien projection, like grinding stone. "Then you choose resistance. So be it. Your destruction will serve as a lesson to the galaxy. No fledgling race defies the Dominion." The projection cut, leaving silence. Holt let it linger, then turned to his crew. "Transmit to all ships, no surrender. No retreat. Today, we show the galaxy that humanity does not break." The comms officer's voice quavered as he relayed the order, but his eyes shone with fire. Across Sol space, 1,000 human ships received the message. On Luna's defense stations, on Martian carriers, on asteroid outposts, every soldier, every pilot, every officer braced themselves. Wren exhaled sharply. "You just painted a target on your back. Varix will want you personally destroyed." "Good," Holt said simply. "It'll keep him focused." For a brief moment, Holt let his gaze wander across the bridge. Young officers barely passed training. Veterans with scars etched in their posture. Engineers, analysts, tacticians, each one clutching duty as tightly as a lifeline. They were terrified. Of course they were. But they were also human. And humanity had never survived by bowing. He lifted his hand, gesturing to the holomap. Look at them. 4,000 ships. They believe those numbers make them gods. They've forgotten something important. What's that? Ren asked. Holt's voice dropped, carrying like a blade through silence. Numbers don't win wars. People do. The room stirred. Officers straightened. Fear turned piece by piece into resolve. The sensors pulsed again, brighter now. The Dominion fleet crossed the orb boundary, descending toward Sol. In hours, they'd be within striking distance of Pluto's defenses. Ren's console beeped. Admiral, incoming transmission from Earth Command. They want confirmation. Do we stand, or do we negotiate? The bridge held its breath. Everyone knew what most species had done when faced with the Dominion, begged for terms. Holt gave his answer without hesitation. We stand. Ren relayed the confirmation. Earth Command's reply came seconds later, acknowledged. The fleet is yours. For the first time in years, Holt allowed a small smile. Authority wasn't enough, what mattered was belief. And now, the survival of an entire species rested on his decisions. He turned back to his crew. Deploy forward scouts. Activate minefields in the Kuiper Belt. Pull reserves from Ceres and Europa. Every trap, every drone, every cannon, ready them all. Aye, Admiral, Ren said, her tone sharpening into iron. One by one, officers called confirmations. The bridge transformed from fearful silence into a storm of activity. Holt gazed out the forward viewport. Beyond the protective shielding, the stars seemed distant, fragile pinpricks against the vast darkness. But the light of Sol still burned strong. He whispered, barely audible. Let them come. The Dominion thought they would find prey. What they would find instead was humanity, teeth bared, refusing to kneel. And when the first shot was fired, the galaxy would witness something it had never seen before. A fleet that shattered not by numbers, but by will. The Dominion fleet crossed Pluto's orbit like a storm front blotting out the stars. 4,000 warships in formation, their hulls glimmering with alien alloys, their weapons arrays glowing with restrained fire. Entire civilizations had crumbled beneath that sight. For the officers aboard the TDS Resolute, humanity's flagship, the sight brought a mixture of awe and terror. Admiral, Commodore Elara reported. The Kael vanguard is splitting off. Rough count, 300 heavy cruisers advancing ahead of the main armada. Holt studied the holomap. The Kael moved with terrifying discipline, no hesitation, no disorder. Like a blade descending. They're testing our defenses, Holt said. They expect a scattered response. They'll find something else. He lifted his hand. Execute Plan Ember. Across the Sol system, dormant signatures flickered awake. From Pluto's orbit, automated drones, little more than spheres of hardened plating and thruster packs, powered up and launched outward, their signals disguised as fleeing civilian craft. Farther in, a lattice of mines hidden within the Kuiper Belt aligned themselves, primed to detonate. And between Neptune and Uranus, a trio of Terran destroyers pivoted into position, ready to play bait. Ren's eyes flicked to Holt. We're gambling with every decoy we've got. If this fails, there won't be anyone left to complain, Holt said dryly. Send the signal. The Kael vanguard surged forward. Their formation stretched wide, arrogant in their numbers. Plasma batteries hummed to life, preparing to sweep aside anything in their path. On the Dominion flagship, Overlord Varix Kael watched the advance with mild detachment. To him, the engagement was a formality. He expected Terran forces to skirmish, scatter, then fall back toward Earth. That was what Prey did. When his tactical officer signaled an incoming cluster of small vessels, he barely glanced at the display. Civilians, perhaps. Clear them. The Kael cruisers opened fire. Beams of plasma lanced across space, vaporizing half the drones instantly. But the rest scattered, darting unpredictably, broadcasting fake distress calls. Some Kael captains shifted formation, pursuing the fleeing signals. Others pressed forward. That's when the mines activated. Hundreds of explosive charges detonated simultaneously across the vanguard's path. The explosions themselves weren't enough to destroy a cruiser outright, but they overloaded shields, disoriented formations, and opened gaps. The Dominion vanguard wavered for the first time. "No!" Holt ordered. The 3 Terran destroyers at Uranus orbit emerged from hiding, thrusters flaring as they charged directly toward the fractured Kael formation. Their railguns spat tungsten rounds, tearing into the exposed flanks of enemy cruisers. The Kael responded instantly, turning plasma batteries on the fragile destroyers. 2 ships disintegrated within seconds. But the third kept charging, burning forward even as its hull split apart. Wren's voice was tight. "Resolute reports contact from the Valiant. Captain Ibarra says, tell them we bought you 10 minutes. Make it count." Holt closed his eyes for half a heartbeat. Then he nodded. "We will." The Kael regrouped quickly, their discipline reasserting itself. But in those few minutes, the main Terran fleet had shifted. From Jupiter's orbit, squadrons of cruisers emerged, releasing clouds of fighter craft. Carriers launched waves of drones, each armed with EMP warheads. The Dominion vanguard found themselves caught between 2 fires, human ships pressing from one side, automated weapons from the other. For the first time, Kael vessels began to fall in significant numbers. Explosions dotted the void, ruptured hulls spilling atmosphere and debris. On the Dominion flagship, Overlord Varix leaned forward, intrigued. His molten eyes gleamed. "Unusual," he murmured. "They fight like no other species." His aide bowed nervously. "Shall I order the vanguard to withdraw?" "No," Varix said, a cruel smile forming. "Let them have their victory. Let them believe their cunning matters. The deeper they cut, the more satisfying it will be when we break them." On the Resolute, the bridge shuddered under weapons fire. Even with their traps and ambushes, human ships were still outgunned. "Shields at 60%, shouted an officer. "We've lost the Halcyon, she's gone." Wren's face tightened, but her hands moved steadily across controls. "Redirect fire to Sector 7. Their formation's straining there." Holt nodded approvingly. Wren was right. The Kael were reinforcing their forward elements, but their left flank lagged. "Signal the Mars carrier group," Holt said. "Tell them to strike hard on that gap. Don't let the Dominion regroup." Moments later, dozens of Terran bombers descended from high orbit, weaving through plasma fire to deliver payloads directly into the weakened flank. Kael cruisers erupted in flame, shockwaves rippling through their line. The first cheer broke across the bridge, raw, disbelieving, but real. Wren allowed herself a quick grin. "They're actually reeling." Holt's voice cut through, calm but resolute. "Remember this moment. Not because we're winning, but because now they'll come harder." And indeed, even as she spoke, Dominion reinforcements surged forward, thousands of ships moving in unison, their formation knitting tighter. The brief crack in their armor sealed, replaced with renewed fury. The vanguard had been bloodied, yes, but it was only the first wave. Hours later, as Terran ships limped back towards Saturn's orbit to regroup, the cost became clear. Dozens of human vessels had been lost. Hundreds of lives extinguished. And yet, the impossible had happened. The Kael Dominion had suffered real losses. "Estimated 70 confirmed enemy kills, Admiral," Wren reported quietly. "Dozens more damaged." For any other fleet, against any other enemy, that would be a crushing blow. Against the Kael, it was a scratch. But for humanity, it was everything. Across the system, comms lit up with messages from surviving crews, their voices carrying disbelief and pride. "We held them. We hurt them. They bleed." Holt listened to the chatter for a moment before shutting it off. "Enjoy the feeling," he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. "It won't last." He turned to Wren. "Prepare the fleet. The Dominion has seen our tricks. Next time, they'll come with everything." Wren straightened. "And us?" Holt's gaze hardened, fixed on the distant stars where the Dominion armada loomed like a wall of fire. "We'll give them more than they can stomach." The command deck of Resolute Dawn hummed with the quiet strain of overstressed systems. Warning lights pulsed faintly at the edges of the consoles, but the real danger wasn't mechanical. It was silent, invisible, riding in the frequencies just beyond human hearing. Elara leaned over the primary console, eyes narrowing as the translation algorithms ran for the 20th time. "That's not just fleet chatter," she said finally, voice low. "It's layered. Something embedded beneath the invasion signals." Jace, who had been pacing like a caged wolf, halted mid-stride. "You mean they're not just coordinating the attack?" "No." She tapped her screen, pulling up the spectrographic overlay. A pattern, faint but deliberate, flickered across the display. Not random. Not noise. A pulse. "This is older. Structured differently. Almost like a distress beacon," finished Admiral Kaelen, who had been listening quietly from the upper tier of the deck. Elara looked up at him, startled. "Exactly?" The silence that followed was sharp. If the invasion carried a distress signal buried in its waveforms, then the armada wasn't fighting alone, or worse, they weren't in full control of their own fleet. Kaelen descended the steps, his boots echoing against the metal. He didn't waste words. "You'll isolate the source. Commander Veyer, plot triangulation. I want to know who's calling for help and why." Veyer swallowed hard but nodded. The implication hung in the air. Humanity might not be fighting the true enemy yet. The hunt for the ghost signal. Hours passed in tense calculation. Engineers rerouted power from non-essential systems to enhance the long-range sensor sweep. Every fragment of data was combed for alignment, each false lead crossed out. At last, Elara straightened, exhaustion lining her face. "I've got it. The embedded signal originates from the edge of the enemy fleet formation. A single vessel." She hesitated. "But it's not like the others." Kaelen's brow furrowed. "Show me." The holographic projection spun into view, a spindly craft, darker than its escorts, hull etched in unnatural geometry. It pulsed faint energy signatures like a heartbeat. Unlike the vast bulk carriers of the invasion force, this ship looked almost starved. Jace leaned closer. "It doesn't fit their architecture. Looks parasitic." "That's because it is," Elara said, her voice steadier now. "The ship isn't theirs. It's enslaving them. The signal isn't a call for reinforcements, it's a cry for release." The deck went still. Every officer, every cadet, every technician absorbed the meaning at once. The invasion wasn't an invasion at all. It was a fleet under duress, it was shackled by something else. The whisper in the dark. Later, when most of the crew had drifted into tense, hushed conversations, Elara stayed glued to her console. Something about the ghost signal gnawed at her. She amplified it, slowed it down, and ran it through translation matrices not meant for living languages. And then she heard it. A whisper. Faint, desperate, but unmistakably a voice. "Help, release us." Her chest tightened. Not alien clicks, not synthetic code. A voice like hers, broken, strained, but undeniably human. She staggered back. Jace was at her side instantly. "What is it?" She played it again. The bridge officers froze as the whisper filled the room, carried on a wave of static. Kaelen's face hardened into something colder than stone. Impossible. But Elara could see the truth in his eyes. He had suspected something like this from the start. A divided bridge. Arguments erupted almost immediately. Commander Veyer slammed his fist against the console. "We can't risk believing it. Could be a trap, engineered to exploit our empathy." Another officer snapped back. "And if it isn't? If there are human lives on that ship, if they've been driving this invasion unwillingly, do we condemn them without even trying?" Kaelen let the debate rage for a moment, his silence commanding more weight than words. Then he cut through the noise. "Enough. This fleet does not strike blind. We are soldiers, not executioners. We'll confirm the truth." He turned to Elara. You'll establish direct contact. If there are humans aboard that vessel, you'll get me answers. And if this is bait. He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle like iron. Then we'll show them what baiting humanity costs. The infiltration plan. Elara and Jace worked side by side, their console awash with streams of code and shifting frequency bands. Together, they built a channel narrow enough to slip past the invasive noise. It's like threading a needle through a storm, Jace muttered, sweat gathering on his brow. Elara didn't look up. Then don't blink. The channel stabilized, wavering but functional. A two-way corridor, fragile as spun glass. Elara swallowed, toggled the comm. This is the United Human Fleet vessel Resolute Dawn. Identify yourself. For a long, crushing moment, nothing came. Just static. And then, Dawn! The whisper was stronger this time, though still ragged. Thank the stars, we thought forgotten. Elara's throat tightened. It was a woman's voice, cracked with fatigue, but human beyond doubt. Jace mouthed the words silently. They're real. The revelation. The voice continued, broken by static. Enslaved, bound to ship, it feeds on us, controls the fleet, not invasion, we're weapons in chains. Kaelen's jaw clenched. He motioned for Elara to cut transmission, but she raised a hand. Wait. We need to know how many. The voice answered before Kaelen could object. Thousands from colonies captured, turned against our own. A chill swept across the deck. The invasion was not humanity's destruction, it was their people, twisted into tools for someone else's war. The choice. The connection faltered, breaking into fractured syllables before dying completely. Elara's hands hovered over the console, desperate to pull the voice back, but the channel was gone. Kaelen finally spoke. We stand at a crossroads. Attack now, and we kill our own. Hesitate, and the parasite strengthens its grip. There is no path without sacrifice. His gaze swept the bridge crew, heavy with the weight of command. But humanity does not flinch. We will free them, or we will burn trying. The crew stiffened, a unified current of grim resolve running through them. Even Jace, reckless and hot-blooded, had gone pale with the enormity of what lay ahead. Elara turned back to the hologram of the parasite ship, its heartbeat pulse echoing like a predator's breath. She whispered the thought aloud, though no one answered. If shattering the invasion means destroying ourselves, are we ready to pay that price? The bridge lights flickered once, as though the ship itself awaited the answer. The atmosphere aboard Resolute Dawn had shifted. The tension was no longer fear, it was a storm of determination. Every officer moved with sharp purpose, every technician bent over their console as if the survival of humanity balanced on their keystrokes. Admiral Kaelen stood at the center of it all, hands clasped behind his back. His eyes tracked the ghost ship glowing on the holomap, a dark parasite at the heart of the invasion. We're not destroying them, he said at last. His voice was calm but rang with command. We're cutting the chains. No one questioned him. Not now. The battle plan. The holomap expanded, showing vectors and arcs of fire. Commander Vare frowned, his scales rippling with agitation. Admiral, the parasite ship is shielded by the entire armada. Any approach will mean being torn apart before we close the distance. Kaelen turned toward Elara. Options. She hesitated, then spoke quickly. The parasite feeds on the fleet through constant transmission. If we can disrupt the binding frequency, even for seconds, it may weaken its control. That would give us a gap to strike directly at the parasite ship. Kaelen nodded once. And how long would such a disruption last? Her mouth pressed into a thin line. Seconds. Maybe less. That's enough, Kaelen replied. His gaze swept across the deck. We'll tear open those seconds with blood and fire. Jace smirked grimly. Finally, a plan I understand. Into the maw. The fleet moved. Dozens of human ships formed a spearhead, thrusters burning white-hot as they cut toward the enemy lines. At the vanguard, Resolute Dawn roared forward, shields straining against the storm of incoming fire. Brace for impact. Someone shouted as shockwaves rippled across the hull. Explosions flared outside the viewports like dying stars. Fighters darted in tight formations, strafing enemy turrets. Frigates absorbed punishing fire, their shields collapsing in waves, but they didn't falter. Every ship in humanity's fleet had the same singular objective: hold the line long enough to strike the parasite. Kaelen's voice cut through the chaos, calm and razor-sharp. Push through. Ignore the fleet, they are prisoners, not enemies. The parasite is our target. The signal war. Elara's console screamed with alerts as she dove into the digital battlefield. Alien frequencies lashed out like whips, trying to choke her systems, to bury her in noise. She fought back with counterwaves, slamming human code into gaps, splitting threads, burning circuits to stabilize the channel. Jace hovered over her shoulder, hands flying across auxiliary controls. You're asking a lot from these old systems, Elara. They'll hold, she snapped, sweat streaking her temple. Because they have to. The parasite pushed harder. For a moment, the bridge filled with ghostly whispers, thousands of voices, distorted and layered into a chorus of agony. The enslaved fleet screaming in silence. Elara gritted her teeth, her fingers a blur on the controls. Not anymore. Not while we're here. With a final surge, she broke through. The parasite's signal wavered, flickering like a dying star. The crack in the chains. Across the battlefield, enemy ships faltered. Some fired wildly, others drifted as though stunned. For the first time, the armada looked less like a wall and more like what it truly was, a cage of puppets with strings fraying. Now! Kaelen barked. Human ships poured fire into the gap, cutting through the armada's weakened flank. The parasite vessel loomed ahead, its twisted geometry pulsing in violent rhythm. Vair's voice cracked. We're inside the perimeter. Target the parasite directly, Kaelen ordered. All batteries, all torpedoes. Make them bleed. The parasite awakens. The parasite ship shifted. Its hull unfolded like jagged wings, revealing a core that pulsed with a sickly, organic glow. Energy rippled outward, and suddenly, the enslaved fleet reawakened, strings yanked taut. Ships surged back to life, maneuvering with eerie precision. Damn it! Jace cursed. It's fighting us directly now. Elara slammed her palm against her console. I can't hold the disruption, it's adapting too fast. Kaelen didn't hesitate. Then we'll tear it open the old-fashioned way. The resolute Dawn plunged straight toward the parasite vessel, shields flaring under relentless bombardment. Human ships flanked it, some burning, some breaking apart, but none turning back. Boarding the monster. The parasite's outer hull cracked under concentrated fire, fissures glowing like molten wounds. Kaelen turned to Jace and Elara. We breach it. The parasite isn't just technology, it's alive. We'll cut it at the source. Elara's stomach dropped. You're talking about boarding it? Kaelen met her gaze, steady and unflinching. Yes. And you're coming with me. Jace grinned savagely, already strapping into his gear. Now this is my kind of fight. Elara wanted to argue, to scream that this was madness. But then she remembered the voice. Help, release us. And she found herself nodding instead. The leap. Grappling harpoons shot from resolute Dawn, burying into the parasite's hull. Shuttles launched through the debris-choked void, carrying Kaelen, Jace, Elara, and a strike team of Marines. The parasite loomed larger with every second, a nightmare of jagged flesh and metal. Its surface pulsed, almost breathing. As the shuttle closed in, Jace muttered, Feels less like we're boarding a ship and more like walking into the belly of a beast. Kaelen's reply was cold steel. Then we'll gut it from the inside. The shuttle slammed into the fissure, cutting torches blazing as the hatch carved open. The stench of ozone and something darker, like burnt flesh, flooded in. Weapons ready, hearts pounding, humanity stepped into the parasite. Inside the maw. The corridors twisted unnaturally, walls alive with pulsing veins of energy. Lights flickered in sickly hues, shadows crawling as if the ship itself watched them. Elara's scanner pinged softly. The core is ahead. That's where it anchors its control. Jace cracked his knuckles. Then let's go unanchor it. They pressed forward, every step echoing like a challenge. Somewhere in the depths of the parasite, human voices whispered again, pleading, warning, guiding. Kaelen didn't falter. He led with steady stride, his voice a low growl. Stay sharp. Whatever we find in there, it's not going to give up its chains easily. And as the strike team advanced deeper, the parasite stirred. The walls shifted, closing behind them like jaws. The battle outside still raged, but inside this nightmare vessel, the real war had just begun. The parasite's corridors pulsed with sick light, veins throbbing beneath semi-organic walls. Every step the strike team took squelched against the floor, as though they walked on flesh. Behind them, the ship sealed the way shut, trapping them inside. Admiral Kaelen raised his rifle, its barrel glowing faintly in the unnatural glow. Forward. No turning back. The whispers grew louder. Human voices, layered with static and pain. Release us, burn it, end it. Elara's hands shook as she scanned the readings. They're alive. Thousands of minds linked to this thing. Their nervous systems are feeding its control matrix. Jace spat on the floor. Then we cut the damn wires. The core revealed. The team emerged into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. At the center loomed the parasite's heart, a swollen, pulsating mass of black crystal and wet tissue, cables stretching from it like the roots of a tree. Encased within its translucent surface floated shapes. Humans. Men and women suspended in stasis, their faces twisted in silent screams. Their bodies twitched with every pulse of the parasite's glow. Elara's breath hitched. Gods, those are the colonies. They're the fleet's control nodes. Kaelen's eyes hardened, but his voice was steady. Then this ends here. The parasite awakens. The chambers shook violently. From the walls, forms tore themselves free, horrid amalgamations of metal and flesh, twisted guardians of the core. Their eyes burned with the same sick glow as the crystal heart. Contact! Jace roared, opening fire. Bolts tore into the abominations, blasting chunks of flesh and steel. The Marines spread out, unleashing a storm of gunfire. Kaelen's commands cut through the chaos. Hold the line! Elara, get me access to that core! Elara dropped to her knees beside the central console embedded in the floor. Her fingers danced over the writhing controls, half machine, half organic. Each touch sent jolts of pain through her arms, but she forced herself to keep going. The dilemma. The console came alive, data screaming across her visor. The truth hit her like a blow. Admiral, if we destroy the core, the parasite dies, but so do they. Every single human linked to it. Jace shouted between bursts of fire. We don't have a choice. Better dead than enslaved. Elara shook her head violently. No. There's another way. If we sever the neural chains without killing the hosts, the parasite will weaken enough to collapse. But, she looked up, her face pale. It'll burn out every ship system we have. The Resolute Dawn won't survive. The chamber roared with gunfire, screams, and the unearthly shrieks of the parasite's defenders. Kaelen stepped to her side, calm even as a beast lunged and was blasted apart inches away. So the choice is ours: sacrifice the enslaved to save the fleet, or sacrifice ourselves to save them. The weight of it pressed on every soul in the chamber. Humanity's answer. The Marines faltered for only a heartbeat before finding their voices. One by one, they shouted over the din. Save them! Cut the chains! We didn't come here to murder our own! Even Jace, who moments ago had argued otherwise, lowered his rifle. His jaw clenched, his eyes burning. Damn it, Elara! Do it! I'll carry you out myself if I have to. Kaelen placed a hand on her shoulder, firm and resolute. This is what it means to be human. We don't break, we free. Make it happen! The shattering. Elara screamed as she jammed the final sequence through the console. Energy arced through the chamber, searing the walls, rattling every bone in their bodies. The core writhed violently. The humans inside jerked, their eyes snapping open as chains of light cracked and fell away. The parasite shrieked, a sound like metal tearing and souls burning, reverberating through the entire fleet outside. On the battlefield, enslaved ships suddenly broke formation. Their weapons fell silent, hulls drifting as control was ripped from them. The parasite's defenses faltered. The Guardians collapsed into heaps of dead metal and meat. But the backlash hit the strike team like a tidal wave. Systems fried, weapons overheated, armor powered down. Over comms, the Resolute Dawn's captain screamed, "Admiral! She's overloading! We can't contain!" Static. The ship outside was dying. The sacrifice. Kaelen's gaze swept the chamber. He didn't flinch. "Mission's complete. Time to go." Jace grabbed Elara, half dragging her as she stumbled from the console, smoke curling from her gloves. "Don't you dare quit on me now." The strike team fought their way back through collapsing corridors, explosions tearing through the parasite's body. Chunks of its hull peeled away into the void, fire bleeding from every wound. At last, the shuttles broke free, blasting into open space as the parasite split in two. Behind them, the Resolute Dawn burned, her hull glowing with the fury of overdrawn reactors. She listed, a proud giant crumbling. But even as she fell, the freed human ships rallied around her, catching survivors, pulling wrecks to safety. The end of chains. From the shuttle's viewport, Elara watched the parasite collapse into itself, a final scream echoing across every channel before silence returned to the stars. Her tears blurred the vision. Not just for the Resolute Dawn, but for the thousands freed at last. Jace sat beside her, bloodied and grinning weakly. "Told you we'd make it. More or less." Kaelen stood at the hatch, silhouetted by the dying glow of their ship. His voice was quiet, but it carried like iron. "Today, humanity's fleet shattered not the invasion, but the chains that bound it. Let the galaxy remember, we don't conquer. We liberate." Outside, freed ships blinked their lights in silent salute. The invasion was over. The war, something far larger, was only beginning. But for this day, humanity had carved its truth into the stars. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to the Void Narratives for more humanity. Fuck yeah! Sci-fi tales. New battles, new legends every week. Join us among the stars.